And from boardrooms to lecture halls, the future of power is being redrawn. Artificial intelligence is no longer just a helpful tool. It's becoming the engine of profit and decision-making. Meanwhile, America's most prestigious university is under siege, facing a political crackdown that could redefine the boundaries of federal authority. The digital revolution and the ideological war on academia are converging, and the stakes couldn't be higher. And I'm Salma Al-Fi'i. Let's get in focus. A few months ago, company executives joked that the AI was like a super efficient intern, fast, helpful, but not to be trusted alone. Today, the intern is just running the show. And according to the Financial Times, tech giants like Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google have shattered earnings expectations fueled by the AI tools, now driving real revenue and displacing human labor. Meta's AI writes codes, shapes, and strategy, and even influences how long users stay on Instagram. Microsoft's Azure cloud saw a 33% surge in revenue, with AI services contributing half of that growth. Even Shopify and Duolingo are openly replacing contractors with generative AI. Yet, this explosion comes with consequences: rising automation, ethical risks, and a wave of job redefinitions. AI has climbed from back office support to C-suite partner, and it's just getting started. And joining us now is Ms. Nora Lee Nodzon, Republican commentator and tech policy analyst. Welcome, Nora, and thank you so much for joining me here today at In Focus.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let me start off by just asking you, the Financial Times calls the AI the intern that's now ready for promotion. Do you think Silicon Valley has moved too fast in giving AI executive level influence?
I think the AI revolution is here to stay, but I do think there are some important moral implications that come with AI. And I think we need to have a proper discussion and debate about that. I personally am concerned that if somebody's wearing an AI bracelet, that they could be recording everything we are saying without my consent. And that does concern me for somebody who's from Texas, who believes in privacy.
Of course,
so
absolutely.
That is a big concern.
Definitely. And Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon all posted record earnings tied to the AI. How sustainable do you think is this growth model? And are we actually seeing a bubble or a durable shift, in your opinion?
It's very interesting because what we see as a result of AI is a lot of investment is going into data centers, and clearly AI is dependent on energy. I will admit, I use AI myself to concise information and get it more quickly than I can searching on Google or the old methods. But I think there'll be a lot more advancements in AI, but I think it'll also be tempered going forward.
Well, some companies like Shopify now avoid hiring humans. So if the AI can do the task, what's your view on that policy, the efficient capitalism, or is it a dangerous precedent, do you think?
Well, I think it's a good question that you raise. I think you're always going to need humans that can balance what AI does. We, in fact, had a former engineer from DeepMind who was speaking about this and saying there are a lot of moral questions that are raised by AI and whether or not it might supersede and have consciousness and supersede human beings. And I think we never want that to happen, but people will have to be perhaps retrained for other positions as AI takes on more and more roles within the economy.
With AI being used to write codes and design ads and even moderate content, are we looking at a creative revolution or a wave of white-collar displacement?
I do think there is a creative revolution going on, but I also think it's important to remember that, and for myself as a mother, having a 9-year-old, it's important that children know how to think critically, be able to write their own prose, design their own designs. This is a very important skill that must not be lost. And it's important for the well-being and the mental health of every human being. So I think that must not be ignored. And I think it can be a tool that enhances efficiency, but it should not replace doing things ourselves. It should just save us time.
But the thing is, how can you actually control if you want the human to do the stuff and AI to be able to have that equilibrium? How do you think that can be actually achieved?
I think those are very good questions in terms of having guardrails, and even within education, these questions are being asked. Yeah. You must make sure that kids are writing their own essays, that they are doing their own.
And the mind is still working.
Exactly, and that the mind is still working. I think eventually there'll probably be a swing back the other way if it evolves too quickly, because there is great fulfillment by discovering and learning and having to research things for yourself and not have AI do it all for you. But it's early days and it's a learn as we go process right now.
Bain and Company's report say 95% of companies are using generative AI, but only 10% have fully scaled solutions. What do you think is holding back the full integration?
Well, I think there are a lot of questions about the hallucinations that AI has. So it may come up with conclusions that are not practical. And so there are limitations to AI. And there's, in fact, one company that I've been working with that is actually working on taking the hallucinations out of AI. So AI is not foolproof. It's not a solution to everything, but it can be part of the tool for progress for business and for science and for saving time and admin time.
Companies are also using AI to justify massive layoffs while expanding capital spending. Do you think there should be a policy that limits that kind of trade-off?
I do think there should be a policy that weighs the advantages of having humans, involved in the mix. Me personally, I've had this conversation with my husband. I would not feel comfortable in automatic driverless cars. I just don't feel safe. I like, as a human being, to be in control. Yes, and it's how I am. It's my human instinct. I trust myself more than I trust a computer. And personally as well, I don't want to live forever. A lot of people are saying AI will help us live forever, or our conscious will be downloaded. I find that very creepy. I don't want that to happen. What I want is actually more time to live the way I lived as a child, if I'm quite frank. It'd be nice to have technology that helps us do that. And I think AI poses a lot of dangerous questions. Some people in Silicon Valley now don't even have relationships. They have AI companions. They work all day, they come home to their AI companion. And you think about, what does this do to community, to society, to the future of having children?
That's quite scary, actually. And,
it is.
Looking ahead, how should the governments, do you think, balance the innovation incentives with protecting workers and ensuring ethical oversight, do you think?
I think the ethics should always come first. I don't think technological progress should be the driver of our policies. I think we have to think about what is best for society and for humanity. And I think that should be the main goal. And how can AI help us? It can help us in science for critical research to solve disease and find cures to a lot of disease. And that I'm all for, but I'm not for it replacing human beings. I don't want to live in a zombie state where AI is doing everything. I want to feel the experience of being a human being.
Absolutely. Well, that was Ms. Nodzon, and please stay with us. And from tools to decision makers, algorithms are now shaping the rules of work and who gets to play. But while AI is being promoted, some of America's oldest institutions are being punished. What happens when the federal government uses financial power to reshape academia?
Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully act office of President of the United States.
Capitol open the emergency and reciprocity.
Mexico. Canada. Greenland.
Harvard is facing a historic confrontation after rejecting demands from the Trump administration to reshape its curriculum, eliminate the DEI programs, and ban mask usage. The White House froze over $2 billion in federal funding. Now the president is threatening to revoke its tax-exempt status, citing failure to act in the public interest. According to Politico, the only parallel is the 1980s IRS battle with Bob Jones University, a case that helped trigger the rise of the Christian right. But the Harvard case is different. It targets ideology, not discrimination, and risks undermining academic freedom and federal impartiality. Critics warn that using tax policy as a political punishment could destabilize university independence and ignite a new culture war backlash, this time from alumni, researchers, and educators defending civil society. And still with us is Ms. Nora Lee Nodzon, and to unpack the political and legal firestorm surrounding the IRS and Harvard. Hi, Nora, and thanks for still staying with us.
Yes.
And do you see this IRS Harvard showdown as being principled reform or a political overreach, do you think?
Firstly, I think it's important to note the First Amendment, freedom of speech, which Harvard is doing its utmost to uphold. I think it's unfortunate that this spat between President Trump and Harvard has occurred. But as a Harvard alum, I commend Harvard and the head of Harvard for filing suit against the administration, because the administration is outside of its reach when it's trying to use the IRS to weaponize education. And I personally know that this will take years. I was on a call with Harvard this week as an alum about raising money for our reunion this year. It will take years. And I think Trump is known for using his language to try to get what he wants out of institutions and out of countries. But in this instance, I think he will fail.
Politico compares this to the Bob Jones case in the 80s. Do you think the precedent applies here, or is the Harvard case totally different?
I think this case is entirely different. Look, there was a New York Times article which stated, and I understand the point that it stated, is that in the Kennedy School of Government, for example, at Harvard, 9-to-1 is the ratio of liberal professors to conservative professors. And I think Trump takes issue with ideology tilting to the left versus the right. He is very adamant that we must not have anti-Semitism, and I agree with that. And the head of Harvard, Garber, agrees that we must not have anti-Semitism, anti-Israeli, anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian, anti-Muslim sentiment, and there must not be any bigotry. And that I'm 100% behind. But I think this case is very different because the other universities have buckled and Harvard has stood firm, protecting itself. I think Trump is lashing out even harder.
What message does this actually, what's happening, send to other universities, especially those that rely heavily on federal research grants?
I think it sends a message that, one, Harvard is going to lead the way and fight for the universities. It
Hopefully.
is the beacon of education, of innovation, of solving key research and disease. And we must not stifle and have a chilling effect on that. And I understand Trump has an issue with the ideological imbalance, but I believe he is out of reach in this instance by trying to use the IRS. And all the articles that I read agree with that. And any battle will take years for anything to happen.
And critics say that this could actually weaponize the IRS for ideological control. What do you think are the risks of politicizing such a powerful institution?
I think there is a risk, but I think in the end, I think Harvard will win in this case.
And Trump's base sees this as a standing up to elitist academia. Do you think this battle would energize his campaign or backfire?
I think it might ultimately backfire. What we've seen actually at Harvard is this year, people who have never reached in their pocket to donate are donating. People are really outraged by what he's done.
Should tax-exempt status for universities be contingent on ideological alignment with any administration's agenda, in your opinion?
I don't believe it should be contingent on ideological views, no.
Well, seeing everything that's happening, where do you see this heading legally to? And what would be the long-term implications for the federal university relations?
I think what we saw originally with the letter that went out, the White House backpedaled. Again, this is Trump's classic style in negotiating and trying to get what he wants. He uses outrageous language at times. And I think there are some things he's done that are great. But in this instance, I think he's wrong. But I think they will eventually agree to a middle ground. And I think the White House will back off.
The Trump administration has been vocal about Harvard's failure to meet the public interest standard. Do you think this is a legitimate concern or a political attack disguised as policy?
I think it's political.
In what sense? I mean, why would you?
Again, the way I see it is Harvard is known to be very left, and he feels attacked by Harvard. He did not like the protest on the Harvard campus, and he's stamping out anti-Semitism, which I think is great. But I think he's singled out Harvard because everybody else has buckled to his requests, and Harvard has refused.
How do you respond to those who argue that Trump's actions could embolden future administrations to target other private institutions based on ideological differences?
I have faith in our Constitution. I have faith in our rule of law. And we have checks and balances in our government. And I believe ultimately, if anything went to the Supreme Court, the truth would be upheld. So I have faith in that.
Many legal experts are questioning the constitutionality of using the IRS in this way. Do you think this could battle, or actually this would actually result in a significant legal precedent?
As I said, I believe that in this instance, Trump will fail by trying to use the IRS. It's outside of their domain. And I believe Harvard would win. Yes, I believe Harvard will win. And then that will set the precedent, and it will prevent any future administration from trying to go after an organization or a university such as Harvard that doesn't necessarily tilt in favor of the administration's political views.
Do you think this conflict might lead to a broader pushback from universities and their alumni networks against federal overreach? I mean, similar to what we saw in the 1980s with the Bob Jones case?
As I said, what I've seen is a lot of the alum from Harvard that studied with me, they are getting emboldened and speaking out against what's happening right now. And they are behind Harvard in terms of defending themselves against what they view as the administration's overreach, and I would agree with that.
Well, the federal government is leveraging its funding power to force ideological change at universities. Do you think this will set a dangerous precedent for how the state interacts with academic freedom?
Look, I think it's important to recognize that, there is a valid point that Trump has about having the diversity in the views within the institution, and Harvard being one of the institutions where fabulous leaders and tycoons of industry and innovation come out of. But I think it's a slippery slope, and I'm concerned about where it could go for the future.
And what role do you think the public opinion will play in this battle? I mean, with vocal support from figures like Barack Obama, could this affect the outcome of the administration's strategy?
I think ultimately it's going to come down to law and legal precedent. So regardless of what people say, but what is important is we're going to have midterms coming up. And so there's a lot of noise on a lot of issues going on right now. Trump has delivered. He wants peace. He wanted to deliver on immigration, which he's done. He's wanted to deliver on decoupling key industry from China and favorable trade and fair trade, which he's working on. And I know it's created a lot of noise, but I think this really is a fight that should not have been picked.
Given the potential financial consequences for Harvard, including the risk of losing its tax-exempt status, how do you see the university responding in the long term?
As I said, I don't think the university will lose its tax-exempt status. I think the law will uphold Harvard, okay. and it's really headlines and it's noise, and it's Trump trying to get them to negotiate a few more terms that are favorable to the diversity that he wants in the academia, with the professors, and in the ideology.
Do you think it's possible that this dispute will lead to a broader political realignment, with maybe educational institutions becoming more overtly, like maybe involved in political advocacy? Or will the situation force them to become more neutral to protect their funding?
I don't think universities will become more neutral. I think it will only sharpen their views for their independence and freedom of speech. That is the foundation and the bedrock of our democracy. We've been preaching about it to Europe, and we must remember that we have to respect it as well, even when we don't agree with what other people say.
With the Trump administration targeting the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, do you see this affecting diversity initiatives at other universities across the country? And will they feel pressured to maybe conform to the political agenda?
I think that's a very good question, and I think we'll have to see how it plays out. I do think that America as a whole is a country of immigrants, so we are very diverse as a population, as Americans. And I do think it is important to maintain diversity within the educational system. But I do agree with Trump that people must get their roles based on their merit. And that's where I think he's 100% spot on.
This dispute seems to reflect a broader cultural war over the role of universities in shaping societal values. How do you maybe think this conflict will influence the future of higher education in America?
I think that's a very good question. I think it takes years to change any system, but I think with 24/7 news, I think regardless, individuals can form their own views with the information they have at their fingertips. And of course, professors can steer it one way or another, but ultimately, I think we are going to want to be free to choose, the classes we take, the schools we go to, knowing that they may have a tilt one way or the other. I, for example, have nieces that are choosing to go to university in Texas, which has a different tilt, more conservative. So people will be choosing universities based off of the professors and how they're known to think there.
Thank you again, Ms. Notson. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights. And as AI rewrites business logic and the IRS reshapes academic freedom, the question is no longer who holds power, but how far they're willing to go to keep it. From machines that now write the rules to federal agencies that challenge the foundations of academia, America is redrawing the lines of authority. And in this new era, power isn't just exercised, it's coded, taxed, and contested. Let's keep the world in focus. Until next time.